Hey everyone, welcome back to So Arizona. Today I'm going to be replanting the bed that I had the garlic growing in, and I'm really excited about this because I have been waiting for this bed to open up for 7 months. Not that I'm ungrateful for the garlic harvest that I got, I'm really pleased with that, but I am ready to move on with summertime things in that bed, and so 7 months is a long time to wait for that. It just so happens that it lines up with monsoon planting, which is really nice, and that's something to keep in mind if you want to plant garlic or onions or shallots, something that takes a long time like those crops do, that if you plant them in October or November, then that will free up your bed right around the time that you need to be planting for monsoon season here in southern Arizona. So that actually works out perfectly. I have been dreaming about a big bed of corn, sweet corn in particular, and I've talked about Silver Queen corn, which is my absolute favorite sweet corn with fond memories from my childhood. So I think I am going to dare to plant this in this bed, and I say that because we have a couple of raccoons that visit our compost pile occasionally, and raccoons are really fond of sweet corn, and so I have these nightmares of having the sweet corn almost finished only to come out and find it's been eaten by raccoons. So I will cross that bridge when I come to it, and it's a risk that I am willing to take because I so want some of the Silver Queen sweet corn. So I have the seeds, I've got the bed cleared and amended with organic compost, and so now I am going to plant. I'm going out of town for a couple of weeks, so I wanted to get that corn planted before I go. That way it gives it a couple of weeks before I come back and I add some of the other elements for my three sisters bed. So when I come back, hopefully within 2, 3, 4 weeks, something like that, we'll see how quickly the corn germinates. I am going to plant some squash and some beans as well. So this bed actually needs a few more irrigation lines. I noticed that when I planted the garlic that there were a couple of spots that were really dry. So I'm going to be adding a few more irrigation lines so that the spaces in between aren't quite so wide, and I will show you that when we go take a look at this bed. But my hope right now is that I can just plant the sweet corn right along the irrigation lines that are in place, put off having to add those new irrigation lines until I get back when I want to add the squash and the beans to that. So that is my plan. That is going to be my three sisters bed, and I'm also going to be adding some new flowers. So let's go take a look. This is what the garlic bed looks like now. All of the flowers that I grew along here are all dried and gone to seed now. So one of my jobs before I leave is to try to collect as many seeds as possible. I've been working on that for a couple of weeks now, but I still have a lot to go. So we'll see how far I get with it. I think I'm gonna have to remove the sunflowers. They're pretty much done now, so I'm just gonna harvest the heads and hang them up to dry to save the seeds for later. But anyway, in their place, I'm gonna be planting sunflowers. Now let me show you these irrigation lines and exactly what I'm talking about here. Hopefully you can see them. Let's get a little bit closer. So there is one here, and then there's one over here, and those are spaced probably 2 feet apart, but I really think they would do better a foot apart. So I think I'm going to add a new one right in the middle here. I can cut into that main line up here and just add them all the way along as I go. Right now I'll just plant the sweet corn along these irrigation lines just so that they can get started germinating and sprouting, and then when I get back, once that corn has a head start, like I said, I'll add the new irrigation line, and then that is where I will plant my beans and my squash. So I think that'll work out really well. And if you see all of this debris, that is because I was using the dry parts of all of the garlic that I harvested, and I just tossed it right back in because I think it's going to make a really nice mulch. So right here, this is just basically like just the chaff and the leaves and things, and they're really, really dry. And I think that's gonna work really well. I have a couple piles here and here. So once I get all of that corn planted, then I'll just go ahead and spread that out to keep the soil a little more moist. All right, so I'm just going to start from this corner and work my way down and over and plant the sweet corn first. right along those irrigation lines, like I said. The packet says to thin to every 12 inches once they're up, but I think I don't really want to waste the seed, and this is relatively new seed. I just got it, I think, last fall. So I'm gonna just gamble a little bit and try to plant them 12 inches apart just from the get-go. And then if I come back and I see that there are any empty spaces, then I'll fill in then. But I think it'll be okay. I've had pretty good luck with this brand of Silver Queen corn, so I'm just gonna try it that way to begin with. And then after I'm finished with that, I'm gonna plant some of the sunflowers along this row. So I think I can plant the sunflowers first, even before I harvest the seeds and cut these other stalks down. And I'm doing it that way just in case I run out of time before I have to leave and I don't get the time to cut these other flowers down that are standing here and dried. I don't want to, delay on planting my sunflowers because I really want those to be up and happy by the time I get back. So I think that that'll work out okay. I'm trying to learn how to prioritize because unfortunately I don't have the time to do all the things exactly how I want to do them sometimes. So I try to do the most important first and then to move on from there. So that's what I'm doing. But the sunflowers that I'm planting here, I'm so excited about. I have some dwarf sunflowers, 3 different varieties that I'm going to try in the front right here. And that's because I don't want them to shade the corn seedlings as the sun moves from east to west, which is the direction that this garden faces. It's east on this side and west on that side. So I want the short sunflowers on this side. And then on the back side, I'm going to be planting my taller sunflowers. And I've got a lot of new varieties that I picked up. Some of them are orange and some are red. There are some of the little teddy bear type that are just really floofy, and those look really cute. And so I've got a lot of different ones. And I've talked about how I really like to save sunflower seeds from my garden too. I don't go to a lot of effort to make sure that it's pure. So there's probably a lot of cross-pollination going, and I do get a lot of kind of weird mixes sometimes. Some of them are really cool though. And I just kind of like having a garden mix that sort of represents all of the different sunflowers. And if I want a specific sunflower during a season, I will buy the seeds. But otherwise, I am just reusing the seeds that I have and really enjoying all of the different variations. It's a big surprise. All right, I'm gonna get busy with planting this corn. I've had a lot of bad luck with birds coming around and plucking up my sweet corn sprouts. The birds are really useful in a lot of ways because they keep the pests down, but they can also be a nuisance in other ways. So that I can try to cooperate with them, I am going to try to block them from my sweet corn sprouts. And I'm doing that by using these metal rods that I'm always talking about. These are very bendable. They're from Johnny's, and you can bend them and make hoops out of them and then attach your shade cloth or your frost cloth or your insect netting. They're just very useful, and I've been using them for several seasons and I love them. They were pretty inexpensive, especially when you think about the fact that they are probably going to be able to be used forever, for years to come. And so I'm going to put hoops over these rows of corn, and I'm going to cover them with some of my shade cloth to try to keep the birds from eating my corn seedlings. I'm also hoping that by spreading around all of the garlic leaves and debris that I have, that it will sort of disguise them. So maybe I can have a little trickery as well as blocking. So that's what I'm going to do after I get the seeds done. All right, now last thing is that I'm going to plant this Livingston dwarf long pod green okra. So I've got my seeds right here, and I'm going to put them along this irrigation line. Probably only do 3. That's kind of pushing the spacing a bit. This variety is only supposed to get to 24 to 30 inches, so it's a pretty short okra variety, and I'm excited to try it. Hopefully you can see this okay because the tree is casting a pretty big shadow right now on this small triangle bed. But this triangle bed is the bed that I grew all the fava beans in over the fall and winter, and I've cleared those out and harvested the seeds. I still have some alyssum here, and I haven't the heart to tear it out just yet because I really want it to go to seed so that it'll come back up next year volunteer, which I expect it will. Once I finally finally decide to rip this out, I'm gonna just rip it up by the roots and then just give it a really good shake all on the soil, because it really seemed to like the spot. And I'm pleasantly surprised that it lasted this long. But anyway, that is going to stay for just a bit, and in its place, this is where I'm going to be planting crookneck squash, and I want an entire bed of it. I think what I'll do is stagger it a bit, and I'm going to plant a couple first, and then I will wait a couple of weeks, and then I'll plant a couple more, just to try to avoid those darn squash vine borers. It is interesting how we have such memories attached to food and to gardening. I was just talking with someone recently, Karen, I'm talking about you, and she was saying that she had really happy memories of growing up in her parents' backyard, where her dad had a big garden and he grew all kinds of things, melons and tomatoes and all sorts of things, and she was looking back on that and, you know, really having some happy memories of it. And now that she has her own garden, she doesn't have as much space, but she really still likes gardening. I've heard that from so many people, that they want to grow a specific variety because their grandma or their mother used to make a certain dish with whatever variety that is that they grew in their garden. And I am the same way. I've got a lot of really happy memories about certain varieties of vegetables that my dad would grow. I actually have some bad memories of some vegetables my dad would grow too, because I hated them when I was little. I actually hated tomatoes and peppers, which is crazy to me now because I've grown up and my tastes have matured and I love tomatoes and peppers. But at the time I thought they were the grossest thing ever. But here I am in my garden growing all sorts of varieties of both of those things. So we grow up and our tastes change for sure, and our memories of our parents and our grandparents and their gardens and the foods that they would make remain, and a lot of those are very fond memories. So speaking of that, I have got my crookneck squash right here, and I'm going to be planting these seeds in my smaller triangle bed, and I have fond memories of this one too. My dad grew crookneck squash in his garden long after I had moved out of the house and had my own house, and even though I didn't have the space then for a garden, he would give me all kinds of vegetables from his garden, and one of those was the crookneck squash. And one of the first times that he gave me crookneck squash, I was like, what am I supposed to do with this thing? What is it? It looked all warty and it was crooked and it just didn't look very appetizing, to be honest. And so he said, oh, you just mix it with some onion and some jalapeno and a little bit of salt and pepper, and then you dredge it in cornmeal and flour and you fry it up. So I tried it and it was so good. And even now as an adult, that's how I make both okra and crookneck squash, and it is just such a treat for summertime. I try to use olive oil, which is different from what he did, to make it a little healthier, and I try not to eat fried foods too much, but I cannot resist okra and squash fried that way. Look at these sunnies. I have a couple of different ones. These were volunteer that came up in here. And those are some really nice seeds, and the head is nice and dry. You know it's ready to harvest. The sunflower head is ready to harvest when it starts becoming a little yellowish. This one is definitely much drier than that, but even when they're still green, once they start getting a bit of a yellowish look, you can cut those. And I like to just hang them upside down by their stem, so I'll show you that here. These are some nice black seeded sunflower heads. What I do is just leave the stem on, and I'll just hang them up like that, someplace where the birds can't get them, but I always leave some for the birds to share. And the way I do that is kind of weird. I'll show you. In this willow tree that's right next to the garlic bed, I'll just cut the ones that I want out. Here's a sunny that I cut a couple weeks ago. It's very dry now, and you can see the birds have picked it pretty clean, at least halfway. And I just left it in this willow tree right here that is right next to my garlic bed. And I'll just find a little crook in the tree, and I will just kind of hang those there. And then the birds will just come as they want to, and they will just have a little treat like that. I've got one here. I've got a lot of them. So let's see on this side. There's some more. So once they're empty, I'll just take them down and throw them in the compost. It's just a little gift to the birds to say thank you for eating all of the aphids for me. Last year I had grown the biggest Texas wild cherry I have ever seen. It was like a monster plant. It dropped a lot of its fruits right after our first frost in the fall, and all of those fruits were so little I could not get them all up. So a ton of them germinated, which is actually nice because hopefully all the seeds have germinated at this point, and now I can remove all of those seedlings from this bed. I did pot up some for my son and I gave those to him for his garden, but there were like hundreds of seedlings here. It was crazy. So I'm going to pull all those up and make way for planting my Black Beauty zucchini here. Rather than start seeds in this bed, I actually had some seedlings for 2 and 2 of the Black Beauty and the Mexican gray squash that I'd forgotten that I planted a couple of weeks ago in the house. So those had germinated and they were up. So I'm going to put those in this bed and then start seeds in the house for some spare. And then just to block those birds and also to harden off those seedlings, I'm going to cover them with some wire cloches and with some shade cloth. So hopefully they will be nice and happy and tucked in by the time I come back. And then because of that squash vine borer, I have some more that are started in the house just in case. Try to scoop these out really carefully. It's hard to hold the camera with one hand and plant. So it's a really nice healthy seedling. All right, now for the others. It just so happens that I have 4 of these bell-shaped chicken wire cloches from Gardener's Supply. So I am going to put them on top of my zucchini seedling to protect it from any wee little beasties or birds. And then I'm going to cover that with shade cloth so that these can harden off as they get established. All right, I put the cloches over each plant and then I put the shade cloth over top and just tucked the shade cloth into the sides of each one of those chicken wire cloches. So that should work, and in a couple weeks I'll take it off. It is getting so hot out here, so I think I'm gonna wrap it up and I'm gonna go back inside into the air conditioning. Thank you all so much for hanging out with me while I plant new monsoon varieties. It is always an exciting time of year when you get to start something different in your garden. I'm Kara from So Arizona. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, happy gardening.